Imagine a message in a bottle tossed into the ocean of time 26 centuries ago. Inside, a map. Not of a world that existed then, but of a world that exists now. A world of satellite imagery, drone warfare, and shifting desert sands. For 2,500 years, a specific prophecy has sat dormant in the scrolls of the Hebrew Bible. It describes a nightmare scenario, a massive multi-nation coalition, led by a mysterious figure from the far north, descending upon a tiny land that has been restored from the sword. A land that was once a desolate wasteland, but is now a global powerhouse. Today the headlines are screaming. Iran and Israel are locked in a shadow war that threatens to ignite the entire globe. Political analysts call it a struggle for regional hegemony. But if we peel back the curtain of modern diplomacy and look into the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, we find a different story. Ezekiel didn't see a modern political map. He saw the end of days, and he named one nation as the primary, indispensable ally in an invasion that would shake the foundations of the earth: Persia. But here is the mystery that should stop every historian in their tracks. In Ezekiel's day, and for 1,000 years after, Persia was Israel's greatest friend. It was the Persian king Cyrus who freed the Jews from Babylon. So why does the Bible predict a total 180-degree reversal? Why does it say that in the latter years, the protector becomes the predator? Today, we decode the Ezekiel 38 alliance. We will identify the Prince of Rosh, uncover the hooks in the jaw, and reveal why this conflict is mathematically inevitable. To understand the future, we have to stand in the past. 600 years before the birth of Christ, a priest named Ezekiel sat by the rivers of Babylon. His nation was gone. His temple was a heap of ash. He was a refugee in a superpower's backyard. It was in this state of total national collapse that God gave him a vision of a future restoration and a future threat. Ezekiel 38 begins with a command: set your face against Gog of the land of Magog. For the casual reader, these sound like names from a fantasy novel, but to an ancient ear, these were geographical coordinates. But who or what is Gog? Is it a person, a title, or a demonic force lurking behind the scenes of history? Before we can understand why Iran is involved, we have to identify the leader of the pack. Ezekiel identifies the leader as the Prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. For centuries, scholars have debated the word Rosh. In Hebrew, Rosh means head or chief. However, many leading biblical geographers and linguists, including Gesenius, argue that it refers to a specific people, the Rus. Look at the map. Ezekiel says this leader comes from the utmost north, or the far north of Israel. If you take a ruler and draw a straight line north from Jerusalem, you pass through Turkey, you cross the Black Sea, and you land directly in Moscow. Magog, Meshech, and Tubal were the sons of Japheth, and their tribes migrated to the regions we now know as the Russian steppes and Central Asia. In the ancient world, these were the Scythians, fierce, horse-riding warriors whom the Greeks feared above all others. Ezekiel is describing a northern superpower leading a coalition of nations against the Middle East. Now, let's look at the anchor allies. Ezekiel 38:5 starts the list with one word: Persia. Today we call it Iran. Until 1979, this prophecy seemed impossible. Under the Shah, Iran was one of Israel's closest allies in the region. They shared intelligence, oil, and trade. If you had told a Bible scholar in 1950 that Iran would lead an Eliminate Israel campaign, they might have questioned your interpretation. But in a single year, the Persian pivot happened. Iran transformed from a secular ally into a radical theocracy whose stated goal is the wiping of the Zionist entity off the map. Ezekiel saw this shift 2,600 years ago. He saw a Persia that was no longer the benevolent kingdom of Cyrus, but a militant partner in a northern coalition. But Iran isn't alone. Ezekiel lists two other nations that are making headlines today, Cush and Put. Cush is modern-day Sudan. Put is modern-day Libya. Think about the geopolitical reality of the last decade. Sudan has drifted in and out of the orbit of radical influence, often hosting proxies of Iran. Libya, since the fall of Gaddafi, has become a fractured state where Russian mercenaries and Iranian-aligned interests vie for control. Ezekiel is describing a ring of fire, a literal encirclement of Israel. From the north, Russia, Turkey; from the east, Iran; and from the south and west, Sudan, Libya. The prophecy paints a picture of a nation surrounded, with no earthly way out. But here is the most fascinating detail in the entire text. In Ezekiel 38:4, God addresses the leader of this coalition, Gog, and says, "I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army." This is a bizarre image. A hook in the jaw is how an ancient soldier controlled a wild beast or a captive. It implies that the leader of this coalition, the northern power, might not actually want to go to war. This suggests a divine compulsion. It implies that geopolitical circumstances will arise that force Russia and its allies into a conflict they were perhaps trying to avoid. What could be these modern hooks? First, economic survival. Russia and Iran are currently the most sanctioned nations on earth. Their economies are tied to energy. For decades, Russia held Europe captive with its natural gas. But then something changed. In the last 15 years, Israel has discovered some of the largest offshore natural gas deposits in the world. Suddenly, the land of no resources has become a direct competitor to the Russian energy monopoly. If Israel pipes gas to Europe, it doesn't just make Israel rich, it makes the northern power irrelevant. That is a hook in the jaw. But there's a second hook. Ezekiel mentions Gomer and all its troops. Most scholars identify Gomer as the regions of modern-day Turkey. For years, Turkey was a NATO ally, but today it is balancing on a razor's edge between the West and the Russo-Iranian axis. If the regional balance tips, Turkey may find itself hooked into the alliance to maintain its own borders. The stage is being set. The actors are in the wings. But Ezekiel gives us a timestamp that proves we are talking about our generation. Ezekiel 38:8 says this invasion happens in the latter years. But then it gives a specific description of the target land. It says the land was brought back from the sword, gathered out of many people, and had been always waste. In 1867, Mark Twain visited this land. He wrote, "Of all the lands there are for dismal scenery, Palestine must be the prince. It is a hopeless, dreary, heartbroken land." For 1,900 years, the land of Israel was a continual waste. But Ezekiel saw a miracle. He saw a people gathered out of the nations. Since 1948, Jews from over 100 different countries, speaking different languages with different cultures, have returned to the mountains of Israel. We are the first generation in 20 centuries to see a reality that matches Ezekiel's description perfectly. The land is no longer a waste. It is the startup nation. But this leads to a massive prophetic puzzle. Ezekiel says the invaders target a land of unwalled villages, where people are at rest. If you go to Israel today, you see walls. You see the Iron Dome. You see one of the most militarized societies on earth. They do not look like people at rest. Does this mean the prophecy is for the far future? Or does it suggest that a peace treaty, perhaps an expansion of the Abraham Accords, is coming? A treaty so convincing that Israel finally lets its guard down? Why do they come? Ezekiel is very clear about the motive: to take a spoil and to take a prey. Ezekiel 38:12. In the ancient world, spoil meant gold, silver, and cattle. But the Hebrew phrase lishlol shalal implies seizing the primary assets of a nation. What is the spoil of modern Israel? First, the energy spoil. We've mentioned the gas, billions of dollars in energy wealth. Second, the technological spoil. Israel is a global hub for cybersecurity and AI. To a sanctioned coalition, seizing this tech is a matter of national survival. Third, the Dead Sea wealth. The Dead Sea contains trillions of dollars worth of potash, bromine, and magnesium, essential for global agriculture and battery tech. Ezekiel saw the wealth before it existed. He saw the hook before the bait was set. And then he describes the reaction of the world. Ezekiel 38:13 says that Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish will stand by and ask, "Have you come to take a spoil?" Sheba and Dedan are the nations of the Arabian Peninsula. Notice, they aren't part of the invasion. They are protesting it from the sidelines. Today we see the Abraham Accords bringing Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states into a weird, silent alignment with Israel against Iran. The Bible predicted this sidelined protest thousands of years ago. If this were a secular documentary, this is where it would end, in a global world war. But Ezekiel 38 isn't a story about a military victory. It's a story about a divine appointment. Ezekiel says that when Gog reaches the mountains of Israel, God's fury shall come up in his face. The text describes a great shaking, a massive earthquake that affects the whole world. It describes pestilence, overflowing rain, and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. The prophecy is explicit. Israel does not win this war through the Iron Dome or the IDF. God allows the coalition to get so close that all hope seems lost, specifically so that he can be the one to end it, because the world has forgotten. In our age of secularism and technology, we have pushed the Creator out of the conversation. This event is described as a global wake-up call. It is a moment where the hook in the jaw is pulled back by the hand that created the universe. As we look at the headlines today, the drones from Iran, the Russian presence in Syria, the tension in the Mediterranean, it's easy to feel a sense of dread. But for the student of the Bible, these headlines aren't a cause for panic. They are a confirmation. If Ezekiel was right about the nations, right about the timing, and right about the economic spoils of a land that was once dead, then we can trust what he says about the end of the story. History is not a series of accidents. It is a controlled narrative. The hook in the jaw is ultimately in God's hand. He is in control of the nations, and he is in control of your life. In a world of shifting alliances, there is only one rock that does not move. I want to hear your thoughts. Looking at the hooks we discussed, the natural gas, the technology, or a potential peace treaty, which one do you see as the most likely trigger in our lifetime? Let me know in the comments below. If this deep dive helped you see the news through a different lens, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are living in the most prophetic times in human history. Stay discerning, stay in the Word, and we'll see you in the next video.